Discovery Season 5, Episode 8. Shh! There's no action scenes in the library. Mostly. Hey, it is Dr. Trek, Larry Nemecek, coming at you here from the heart of Trekland, letting the dust settle just a bit on all the recent Trek headlines and fresh episodes, but instead of a hot take or a quick take, you get a second opinion from Dr. Trek. Hey, I have been writing, editing, authoring, witnessing, hosting, archiving, dot connecting, commentating, and yes, fanning Star Trek for a while now. And I just want to say, it may take a while to really put this episode in its place in hindsight, but wow, Discovery, you have come so far this season. No, really. I mean, so much silence in the dark. Just taking the time to be reflective. In fact, never has dark been used so well on Disco. Even the bridge. The bridge feels more, ironically, more lit with character. Like never before. There's yellow and all of that, red alert, and greens. What is that, programmable matter neon? But there's a lot more going on here than color and light and dark. On both sides of the yin-yang karma line, all right? We'll get to it, but first, kudos. Kudos to our two writers this week. Well, one, Lauren Wilkinson, a novelist, award-winning, turned screenwriter. This is her first season on Discovery. She's executive story editor in The Room. Her first credit was co-credit on Janal. And here she's writing with, yes, Eric J. Robbins, who has been around the room, the writer's room with Discovery. Oh my God, since what, season 3? He came up the ranks as a writer's assistant, all those steps. This is his first year on staff as a staff writer, and this is his very first writing credit. And he was out on the line marching where I met him back during all the summer strikes in 2023. So kudos, Eric. And then in the director's chair this week, well, it's another fresh face for Star Trek, Emmanuel Osei-Kuffour. He's a Ghanaian-American writer-director, born and raised in Houston, Texas, spent 10 years working in Japan, in the industry since 2008. He's also written, he's also edited, and his own sci-fi thriller written and directed, Black Box, was a huge hit in 2023, got him on the radar, and this is his first Trek credit of any kind. Okay, little things, big things. Lots of little things this week. For one, Breen used flags too. And wasn't it cool to see those truncheons used for more than a tiki torch? And a big thing, after 30 years, we now know. The reason the Badlands are a thing is not just because they hang out in Bajor and Cardassia's hood, but they are the largest plasma storms in the quadrant. So there. And haha, Discovery, you actually pinned yourself down to a real place this season, outside of the post-burn Federation headquarters building, which of course is actually just south of Breen Space. Little things, comprehensive guide to Talaxian hairstyles. That's Neelix. Hooperian folktales. That's my Hardu. Grand Nagus manservant, tall guy. Euclidean geometry. That's just math. Oh, big thing. And in a season that has leaned so much into language, look what we learned here. I mean, one thing this season, and I guess this century, is that no matter what the level of the formality or the speaker of the situation, everything is always fixed in this century.
We cannot jump again until it is fixed.
Nothing is ever just repaired. Even more, holy shit has apparently survived the centuries as a colorful metaphor. Either that or, well, apparently more likely, Gallo and Rayner and folks like that are just huge practicing retro language nerds. I mean, Gallo is a wheels-on pavement drag racing fan, you know. So there's that, Tom Paris fans. By the way, it's almost lost, but amid all the climax chaos, the monitor picks up Raymer killing a Breen soldier and then screaming, There's more of that down here, you gelatinous assholes. Oh, little thing, but still. Who else ran to Google it? Thanks to quirky Hy'rell's line about, it's not a dungeon, it's an oubliette. Yes, oubliette. From the French oubli, meaning to forget. It's a bottle dungeon. It's a basement room which is accessible only from a hatch or a hole in a high ceiling. What a kidder. Little thing? I mean, it was very cool to see a callback to booking his Quajon past and his culture. But boy, that must have been some kind of route to get that kind of reaction. I know, at this point, anything a Quajon dust speck would have done it at this point. But I kept expecting whatever it was to figure back into the plot. Big thing? Well, now look, for somebody of the Prodigy Picard era, that was some Soong-level AI interactive mindscape program there, Dr. Derek. But did you catch the nucleonic neural link mention? That wasn't very creative, because apparently all she did, that Betazoid doctor, all she had to do was dive into all the Enterprise D after-action reports on Catan, because it's exactly how the Resican probe connected to Picard's brain for the galaxy's most infamous flute lesson. The inner light. Little thing? That whole solving the maze using Tremo's algorithm, that's a real thing. Basically, it's what you saw Burnham doing. Aided, of course, by the semi-low-tech bottomless pot of sand. A little thing that went big. Vent the plasma and jump. Nice dodge. Nice effect. Yeah. Hey, new Star Trek stunt battle tactics. Hard to come by after 60 years. And one final little, I always knew that Discovery captain's chair was crazy big for some reason. Who knew it'd just be so it could host the climactic 5th season arc's focus prop. But I do still have some questions. I mean, that opening sequence really set the war-footing tone of this alien species and just penetrated the hell out of that Breen dreadnought. But what does it mean when the Breen are all tromping their truncheons like that? Does it mean something, or are they just a little agitated? But even more than that, does every Primarch, like Ruin, the 6 all gaming for the throne, do they all get one? Do some have 2? Is it an even-Steven thing? Do some don't have any? Is that a mark of power? But even more than that, those things are so honking big. Do the Breen just think that everything dirty and shooty is going to happen so far from home they need that? Or are they just like projecting their power like this? I mean, for an Enigma species that no one knew much about, the Breen sure looked prepared to travel, much less participate fully in the eternal gallery and archive. By the way, has the EGA surpassed Memory Alpha here? Not the website, the real thing. I mean, was Memory Alpha lost in the burn? Or even the temporal wars? Because look, with the timing of the original Clue Hunt, this sucker has been around since at least the Dominion War. 1,000 years. Before that. Now, Reno said, last episode, that the EGA had moved every 50 years or so as a precaution. But here, Hy'rell says that the EGA hasn't moved for nearly a century. So was that bad continuity, or, texture not trivia, maybe that was something to do with the burn and they weren't able to move? But really, my first reaction was, bookshelves? Really? Nothing is digital? But it is a beautiful set. And, you know, you instantly get the gut reaction. Oh, it's a location set they're using with CGI extensions and all. But I tried to Google iconic Canadian libraries, got nada, until Eric J. Robbins, co-writer, shared that this is the Thomas Fisher Rare Book Library in Toronto, with the University of Toronto. It's actually that real-life atrium design through 4 or 5 levels. And the shooting company used all of that and built removable set walls so they could get the claustrophobic feel of the stacks, right? The old school. They moved that set around, shot the hell out of it, got that maze, got that labyrinth. Reminded me a lot of exactly what Cliff Bowl did back on Best of Both Worlds when they cut half of his original board corridors built for Best of Both Worlds, and he shot the hell out of those scenes. Created all that tension with just a simple H of corridors and a row of alcoves. By the way, on the first approach, the first time we see the reading room, the central landing, did you notice the Andorian visitor librarian? There's another big head alien, and another one. Might have been an Antikin. But nice touch, guys. By the way, too, did you notice on the big matte painting, the big approach shot, there's spires on that thing. But the EGA also has domes, too. So what is that? Biodomes? Is that flora? Is that fauna? Favorite line? I love when you two do that. That's it. Do it again. Wow. Meta Snark Reno would have loved Janeway and B'Elanna. Runner-up, shouldn't be surprised, Janal would have let an Itriok eat us. Episode 3. Okay, cast and characters, and there's surprisingly a lot to talk about this time around. For one thing, okay, Reno, are they just going to owe Jet Reno for saving all of humanity thanks to her odd job resume? I mean, how in the galaxy did O'Brien beat her out as most important person in the history of Starfleet? Oh, that's right. Way more screen time. Most important person in the... You got to watch Lower Decks. And Recent Command. Anybody notice that TOS vibe? Scotty, break out of orbit if you have to. We'll hold out till you get back. And look, another Bridgie. Lieutenant Lorna Jameson, played by Zara Bentham. Could the character have been an honorarium for Dr. Mae Jemison, space and STEM activist, and the first Black female in space? Yes. And then, in her youth of odd jobs, off camera, Jet Reno hung out with Hesperians. You know, Andy Billups's Ren Fair people. You really gotta watch Lower Decks. And then Hy'rell. Now look, I'm sure by now you've heard, read, smelled how we finally have another Efrosion on screen in Star Trek. You know, the Federation president in Star Trek VI, the Saratoga helmsman at the beginning of Star Trek IV, they were all unofficially homage named, but then printed in a couple of publicity places. It was all named for Star Trek IV unit production manager Mel Efros. And hey, after all these years, it's still not mentioned on camera. And we still don't know anything about the people or the culture. Except, you know, they're still around, participating, apparently, 800 years later. Except, apparently, we learned Hy'rell is from South Efros. We sure did! Seriously, though, just like the Breen and all these other flyby Easter eggs this season, Eric, once again, told me that, quote, I love Star Trek VI, and I wanted to see an Efrosian that both had a name, finally, and was a female. And with all the location and stunt work and set work to do, it was also a budget-friendly, time-friendly makeup job. Oh, and congrats, Primarch Rune. Way to go full evil villain mode there with the chokehold and all the other evil flourishes. I swear he's grown a gelatinous mustache underneath that helmet. The bigger they want to be, the harder they fall. But hey, talk about a dark horse. This Lieutenant Erisar, this Breen head minion. Yeah, well, the name was in the credits last episode. It's spoken here. What about Maul's knowing look with him, huh? Over and over. I mean, even through that helmet, you've got it. That's some very sensitive little lieutenant henchman there, making vibes at critical moments with her over and over again. I was starting to wonder if Maul and Arisar, if they shared one more glance, I swear either he was faking that whole destroyed disco report himself, or Locke in all his restored glory was about to bust out of that suit. But seriously, nothing she did came out of the blue. Maul's character and the flashbacks and the way it's been written and Eve Harlow's performance, they have been so step-by-step building to this point, these 8 hours of episodes. I mean, I don't think anything that happened that we saw was surprising. It's been really well handled. I don't even think it's been totally telegraphed. I mean, there's going to be a mostly positive arc for her, but exactly how it gets there, it's been interesting. It's been a fun ride. Finally, something for Book to do. I mean, it was a big deal to go down with the away team, sure, but then Mindscape Avatar Book, that was a revelation. I mean, just having that little AI performance, I want to say David Ayala now do Shakespeare. I'm serious. His calm and his equanimity. This was a showpiece for him. Sanguine. Speaking proactively. I mean, it was a great line. Great bunch of touches all through that scene with Michael, right? I mean, those were almost my favorite line runner-ups. So subtle, though. It's just it's just such a contrast from action Booker and even stoic lovelorn Booker. I mean, kudos, David. Kudos to everybody involved, the writers. I saw shades of him that I really have not seen in the series so far. I loved him in the archival's Pointy Shoulders. But final thoughts, yeah. I come back to this reflective episode. I mean, boy, you thought the Quiet Planet plot was something. Well, we'll see your whistle speak and raise you a Labyrinths. Yeah, I'll see your Still Woods planet and raise you a library stacks in the dark overnight. But that title, Labyrinths, I mean, sure, nominally it comes from the Betazoid book, right? The clue, Labyrinths of the Mind, but Burnham figures it out. The labyrinth is of her mind, feelings, emotions, memories. This is the most self-therapy since we were dissecting Vulcan orphan adoptee trauma amid Klingon attacks and younger foster brothers on the spectrum. But this time, it's a crying scene that I don't mind. It's a tear scene, a single tear scene. And it sets up her coming reunion with Book sometime in the last couple episodes, right? By overcoming whatever it was, pride that got in the way in that finale rushed scene at the end of season 4. Only thing is this clue test using ethics and morality. Oh, that's great. Considering that whoever is doing the hunt, whoever's being tested, would be the only individual to ever eventually get a hold of the progenitor's tech. Now, if only Burnham's big secret final clue hack works out. But the title is Labyrinths, plural. I mean, look around the episode. Who else had a maze to navigate of sorts? There's not a lot of real B stories here. Unless you get back to, yes, the guest cast, and that means Maul here. Navigating her moxiest moment ever. Yeah, that was Max Moxie Maul. And yeah, along with all the individual threads that have been developing this year, Raynor's redemption of softening, Culber's spiritual questioning, Tilly's return to frontline action, Adira's step up, Saru's step out, somewhere, all of that. It really seems to be setting up fairly well for the finale. Fairly well a structured season. So far. I mean, no one can argue that this has not been the most multi-flavored, the most standalone-esque season of Discovery ever, as long as the progenitor's big tech doesn't come off as the big overblown. Yeah. And then, as I mentioned once before, this season, if it all comes together in the end, this season might just be the biggest thing since Enterprise that makes you want to say, you cancel it now? Oh, and one more thing. Did anybody else get an Emerald City moment when they come upon the EGA there with all the spires and remind you that it's the final clue? And then Dorothy kills the witch. I so wanted those Shockbrain to gather around, stomp their truncheons, and start saying, "Hail Dorothy! Hail Dorothy!" Okay, that's probably a good place to sign off on this second opinion. That's what I thought, but how about you? You can drop your comments below. Please do. Let's get a great discussion going, okay? And please, would you like and subscribe? Share this out. Hey, boost the signal. I dare you to subscribe for some Star Trek sanity. And yeah, most of all, if you appreciate my Trekland point of view, everything Dr. Trek is saying here, I invite you to go over and check out all of our podcasts and live stream shows like the Trek Files for Roddenberry podcasts. And yeah, my Tuesdays Trekland Live. Cadet Alice and I watch Star Trek Prodigy. All of it. And our experiences like Portal 47, our flagship behind the scenes monthly package, and Trekland Treks, your own customized location tour around Southern California. I invite you to take a look at all of it over at LarryNemecek.com. Hey, we have a TeePublic store too. And hey, I do cameos. Did you know that? Look, we'll see you back here next week. And till then, Trek well, everybody.